Hey everyone, it's John here, and in this video we're going to take a look at everything you need to know about the index and match functions in Excel. So first off, we're going to take a look at the index function. So we're going to talk about what it does, and we'll take a look at a couple examples. We'll also take a look at the match function. Again, we'll figure out what it does and take a look at some examples. Then once we've got those two functions down, we're going to combine them together to create a lookup formula, similar to what VLOOKUP does. After that, we'll compare index and match to VLOOKUP and talk about why we might want to use index and match instead of VLOOKUP. After we've got the basics down, we'll take a look at some more advanced scenarios. So we'll take a look at index and match with multiple lookup criteria. We're also going to take a look at a two-dimensional index and match lookup formula. And then we're going to go warp speed and do a three-dimensional index and match lookup formula. So let's head over to Excel and let's get started. First off, let's take a look at the index function. So what does the index function do? It's going to allow us to return a value from a range or array based on its row and column coordinates. So the index function has three arguments. We need to supply an array of values that we want to return a result from. And then we need to supply the row and column number where that result is in the array. So let's take a look at our first example here. I've got some car manufacturers here in a vertical array. And let's use the index function to return one of those car manufacturers. So let's write our index function. And the array of values for our first argument is this list of car manufacturers here. And I'm going to press F4 and make that an absolute reference. And then the next argument is the row number of the value I want to return. So in this case, let's try returning the value from row number 3. And since we have a row number there, the column number can be an optional argument. And if we leave it out, it's going to default to the value of 1. And in this case, we only have one column, so that's perfect. Let's close that function off and press enter. And we can see the result we get is Toyota. And that's because that's the third item in our list here. Let's just copy this down. And let's edit this function. Let's press F2 and go into edit mode. And let's add in a column reference this time. So we're going to reference column 1. And we should get the same answer. Let's try that out. Toyota. There we go. This time I'm going to copy this down again. And here I'm referencing column 2, but the array that we're referencing here only has one column. So what ends up happening is we get a reference error here. So we're trying to reference a column that's not in our range, and that results in this reference error. Next, let's take a look at a very similar example, but this time we're going to be using a horizontal array of values. So the first argument is the array of values we want to return results from, and that's this range right here. Again, I'm going to lock that down with F4. And then the next argument is the row number. Now, because we're going to be referencing a column number in this instance, the row number can actually be an optional argument here. So we're going to leave it out, and we'll do that by just typing another comma and leaving that area blank between those two commas. Now we can reference our column number. So let's try getting the result from column number 5 in that range. And let's close off our formula. And the result we get is 5 series. So that's because we can see that that's the 5th column in our range here. Let's just copy this down. And let's press F2 and edit that. And again, here we only have one row of values. And when we leave that argument out, it's going to default to 1. We can also reference 1 there, and we should get the same answer. Let's just copy this down again. And now in this example, we're trying to reference row 2. We don't have a row 2 in our range of values up here. So again, we get this reference error. Next, let's use the index function with a two-dimensional range. So we have more than one row and we have more than one column here. And let's return a result from this range here. So again, let's start off our index function. And the range of values we want to return from is this range here. And we're going to return a value from row number 4 and column number 2. Let's close that off and see what we get. So the result is Suzuki. And that's because Suzuki is in the 4th row of our range and in the 2nd column here. Now the index function is a little bit unique because it actually has two possible argument signatures. So if you start typing out index, then you'll notice the little pop-up that comes up here has two possible argument signatures. So we have this array signature right here, and we also have this reference signature right here. So what you can do with the index function is you can actually reference multiple arrays and then choose which array to return results from based on this area number argument. And to create a reference, what we need to do is use a parentheses and then reference our ranges and separate them by commas. So let's reference these 3 ranges right here and close off that parentheses. And that's our range references right here. And the next argument is the row number we want to return results from and the column number that we want to return results from, just like the previous examples. And then we have this extra argument here, the area number, and that's going to refer to which range of values you want to return results from. So here we've got 3 ranges, so we could put either a 1, 2, or 3 here. Let's see what happens when we return results from area 1. Let's close that off. And we get Ford. And that's because in area 1, row 2, column 1, we have the value of Ford here. Now let's just edit this. And actually, I'm just going to press F4 and turn those into absolute references so that I can copy my formula down. And let's copy and paste that down. And here now we're in area 2 and we're returning results from row 4 and column 1. And that's Cadillac. And that's what we get right there as a result. Here we're returning results from area 3 and we're returning the result from row 3 and column 2. So in area 3, row 3, column 2, that's infinity, and that's the result we get here. So that's the index function. We can use it to return a result based on its row and column coordinates. And the index function, it has 2 possible argument signatures that we can use. We can either use the array signature or the reference signature. Next up is the match function. And the match function is going to allow us to search for a value in an array and then return its position within that array. So the match function has 3 arguments. We need a value that we're looking for and then an array of values that we're going to look for that value in, and then a match type that's going to determine what type of match is returned. So we have 2 different types of approximate matches, and we can also do an exact match with the match function. So let's take a look at our first example. Here we've got an array of car manufacturers again. And we're going to use the match function to look for the value of BMW in there. And let's see what happens. So the first argument is the value we're looking for. That's BMW for us. And the next argument is the array of values we're going to be looking in. So that's this range here. Let's just press F4 and turn that into an absolute reference. And the last argument is the match type. So we have three options here. And in this example, let's return an exact match. So let's press Tab and close off that function. And the result we get is a 4. So that's because BMW is the fourth item in our list here. So it's in the fourth row of this range here. Let's just copy and paste this down. So here we're now looking for the value of Acura in this list here. But if you scan through this, you'll find that Acura is not in that list. And so our match function is going to return an NA error because of that. The match function also works with horizontal arrays. So we can do a similar example here. So let's look for accent in this range of values here. So the first argument, what we're looking for is accent. And then we're going to look in this array here. And let's just lock that down. And again, let's do an exact match this time and press enter. And we get a result of 2 here. And that's because accent is in the second column of our range. Let's copy and paste this formula down. Again, we're looking for Acura, but it's not in this array here. And our match function is going to return an NA error because of that. Now, the match function also allows us to do some approximate matches. So in this example, we've got some sales values here, and we're going to be searching in those for a value of 70 million. Now, we don't have a value exactly of 70 million in there, but we can still find a match based on the approximate matches available. So let's try this out. Again, we're going to be looking for 70 million, and we're going to be looking in these sales values here. And this time we're not going to use the exact match because we definitely don't have an exact match there with 70 million. So we have these two options here. We have this less than option or greater than option. Now the less than option allows us to find the largest value that is less than or equal to 70 million in this case. And in order for this to work, our data has to be in ascending order. So here our sales figures is in ascending order. We can see that it goes from smallest to largest. So we can use this less than match type. And let's see what we get. So the result here is 3. And that's because the third value in our list here, 62 million, is the largest value that's still less than or equal to our 70 million that we're searching for. Let's take a look at the other match type, and to use that one we need to have our data in descending order. So here we can see that our sales data has been placed in descending order. So we're starting with the largest value here and then going down to the smallest value. And let's try finding a match for our 70 million value. So we're going to be looking for 70 million, and we're going to be looking for that in our sales values here. And this time we're going to use the greater than option. So this is going to find the smallest value that is still greater than or equal to our 70 million. And again, for this to work, we need our data in descending order. So let's press Tab and select that match type. And when we press enter, our result is 2. And that's because the second value in our list here, this 85 million, is the smallest value that's still greater than 70 million. So that's a couple examples of the match function. It's going to find a match in an array and return its position in that array. Now that we've taken a look at the index function and the match function, we can use these two functions together to create a lookup formula. So with the match function, we can find a match and return its position. And with the index function, we can take a position and return a value. So we can combine these two together to create a lookup formula similar to what VLOOKUP will do. So in this example, we want to take the value of BMW, and then we want to return the corresponding model in this set of data. So let's create our index and match function. So first we need our index function, and the first argument is the array of values that we want to return. So here we want to return the model. So let's select that. And next we need to figure out what row number our corresponding model is. And to do that, we're going to use a match function here. And in the match function, we're going to be looking for the value of BMW. And we're going to look for that in our column of car makes. And we want to do an exact match in this example. And here we don't need to specify the column number. We could put 1 here if we wanted to, but it's going to default to 1. So our columns here are a single column each. So we need a 1, or just leave that out and let the default value be 1. So we can close off our formula and press enter. And the result we get here is a 5 series. So as we expect, if we look in our data here, BMW, the model that we have listed here is the 5 series, and that's the result that we're returning. So here our data was in a vertical orientation, but we can also do the same thing if we have horizontal data. So here I've got the exact same data set up. It's just been transposed so that it's horizontal. And this time let's search in the model for Safari, and let's return the corresponding make. So in this data, here's our Safari, and what we should return is GMC. So let's use index again. And the first argument is the array of values that we want to return. So for us, that's the make. And now we don't need a row number. What we need is a column number. So we can either leave this argument blank, or we can put a 1 in there, whichever you want. And now we need to determine the column number. So we're going to use a match for that. And the value we're looking for here is our Safari. And we're going to look in this range of data here. And again, we want an exact match. And we can close off our formula and press enter. And the result we get is GMC as expected. So with index and match, we can create lookup formulas, and then we can look in any column we want and find the corresponding value in another column. And we can also do the same thing if we have horizontal data and look in rows. Now let's take a quick look at why we might want to use index and match versus VLOOKUP. So index and match is a bit more complicated to create a lookup formula with, whereas VLOOKUP is a single function and therefore easier to write. VLOOKUP does have some problems that index and match is able to solve. So here I've got an index and match function set up, and what I'm doing is looking up the car make and returning the car model. And let's just press F2 and edit that. We can see that we're referencing those two columns here and looking up this value. And I've got a corresponding VLOOKUP function here that's doing the same thing. So here we've got a VLOOKUP, and we're looking in this range of data, and we're looking for Pontiac and trying to return the corresponding model for that. So you can see that we get the same result here, whether we're using index and match. But one of the problems with VLOOKUP is that VLOOKUP is easy to break. So if we insert or even delete columns in our spreadsheet, we may end up breaking our VLOOKUPs. So let's take a look at that. If I were to come over here and select this column and right click and insert a column, then you can see that my index and match function still returns the correct result. But what happens with my VLOOKUP is I'm no longer getting the correct result. And if I press F2 and edit this, we'll see why. And that's because we are referencing an entire range, and VLOOKUP requires us to define what column to return. So here our column that we're returning is column 2. And because we inserted a column, model is no longer column 2, it's actually column 3. And we have this blank column here, and that's what we're returning. So let's just undo that. The other problem with VLOOKUP is that we're not able to look up values to the left. So here I've got an index and match function set up, and here we're looking in the model column for Corvette, and we're trying to return the corresponding make for that. So we have Chevrolet here, and actually I don't have a corresponding VLOOKUP because VLOOKUP is unable to do that. So with VLOOKUP, we have to reference a single range, and our lookup column has to be the first column in that range. So we're unable to look to the left of any column. So those are two big reasons why we might want to use index and match instead of VLOOKUP. Now we're going to take a look at some more advanced scenarios with index and match. So first, let's take a look at how we can use index and match to look up values based on multiple criteria. So here I've got some data for car makes and models and sales. And notice that we've got some duplicate values here. So we've got Chevrolet a couple times. And we've also got duplicate values in our model here. So we have Prism here, and we also have Prism here. And for example, if I want to look up a Geo Prism instead of a Chevrolet Prism, then we're going to have to use both these columns to do so. So let's see how we can do that with our index and match. First, let's create an index function, and the first argument is the array of values we want to return. So that's our sales figures here. And now we need to supply the row number of the value we want to return. And to do that, we're going to use the match function to calculate that. Now, the first argument in our match function is the value we want to look for. Now, that's a single value, but here we have two values, so we want to look for Geo and Prism. So to do that, what we're going to do is create a single value out of these two values. So let's reference Geo, and we're going to use an ampersand to combine that with Prism. The next argument in our match function is the array of values we want to look in. And again, we have two arrays of values that we want to look in. So we have our make column and our model column, but we need a single array here. So what we're going to do again is combine those with the ampersand. So let's select our make column and use an ampersand and combine that with our model column. And the last argument, we want an exact match. And we can press enter. And for GeoPrism, we get our value of 1.4 million as the result. Now, this is working for me because I'm on Office 365 and I have access to Excel's new dynamic array functions. So if I just type filter here, you can see that I have the filter function, which is a dynamic array function. If you don't have those and you're on an older version of Excel, then this isn't going to work. And what we need to do is, instead of entering the function just by pressing enter, we need to use Control, Shift, and Enter to enter the function. So if I hold Control, Shift, and press enter, then that's going to create an array formula. And you can tell because it's got these curly braces enclosing our formula. And that's going to allow us to have this function work in older versions of Excel. So that's how we can look up values with multiple criteria. We can combine them together into a single value and a single lookup array. Now let's take a look at a two-dimensional lookup. So here we've got a table of exchange rates, and what we're going to do is be looking up a specific exchange rate based on a value in this array here and this array here. So for example, if we want to find the exchange rate from euros to US dollars, then we need to find euros here in this single array. And then we need to find US dollars in this array here. And at the coordinates of that is where we'll find the exchange rate that we need. So we're going to use the match function on this array here to find a match for our from currency. And then we're going to use a match function on this array here to find a match of our to currency. And then the index function is going to allow us to return the result for the column and row coordinates of those matches. So let's try this out. And we're going to start with our index function as usual. And the values we want to return are this table of exchange rates here. Now the row number, we're going to use match to get that. And the value we're going to try and match is our from currency. So we're going to try and find euros. And we're going to try and find that in this array here. And we're going to do an exact match. So that'll give us our row coordinates. And then after that, we need some column coordinates. And again, we're going to do a match with that. And we're going to be looking for US dollars here. And we're going to try and find that in this array here. And we're going to do an exact match on that as well. And we can press enter. And that gets us our exchange rate. So here we're going from euros to US dollars. We have 0.8995, and that's the result we get with our index and match. And let's just test out some other values here. So maybe we're going from Japanese yen to Great British pounds, and that should get us right here for a value of 145.73, and that's what we have right here. So that's how we can use index and match as a two-dimensional lookup formula. So we're looking in this array here, and then we're also looking across this array here. So 2 dimensions that we're looking in. Now let's take a look at one last advanced example with index and match. So let's go from a 2D lookup to a 3D lookup. So here we've got our 2 dimensions that we're looking up, and we've got the same formula for that we just looked at. But now let's introduce a 3rd dimension. So here is our 3rd dimension. We're going to try and look up values from a different table depending on this option here. So we've got bid prices for our exchange rates, and we've also got ask prices for our exchange rates. And we want to be able to look up either the bid price or the ask price based on our selected from and to currencies. So let's see how we can modify our 2D lookup here. And let's press F2 to edit this. And what we're actually going to do is use index's second argument signature, and we're going to use a reference instead of an array here as our first argument. So let's create a reference and reference our first range here, and separate our second range with a comma and reference that one, and close it off with another parentheses there, closing parentheses. And so now we've got a reference to 2 tables here in our index function. And then we also need to add the area argument to our index function. So that's the last argument. Let's add a comma there. And let's reference this value here, which is going to allow us to switch from either table 1 or table 2. And let's press enter. And so right now we're looking up values from table 1, and you can see that we've got euro to US dollar exchange rate, and we have the value of 0.8995. Let's see what happens when we select table 2 now. And you can see in table 2, the euro to US dollar exchange rate is 0.9082, and that's the result we have up here now. So that's a three-dimensional lookup with index and match. So we're looking up dimension 1 here, dimension 2, and the different tables are our dimension 3. So there you go. That's everything you need to know in order to master the index and match functions and to combine them together to create very powerful lookup formulas. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel for future Excel videos like this one. Also, make sure you sign up for my newsletter. The link for that is in the description below. And when you sign up, you'll get a couple of ebooks that are going to help you on your journey to mastering Excel. That's it for this video. We'll see you in the next one.